Hello, today is November the 4th, 2020. And if you're here for how Mastercard turned its documentation into a superior customer experience with Jill Sheffield, you're in the right place. My name is Scott Abel, and I'll be your host for today's show. Let me tell you a few things about this webinar. First of all, we cannot see or hear you, so you don't have to worry about your camera or microphone. We also can't have a two-way conversation with you, but let me tell you something more useful, which is what you can do during the show. You can actually ask us a question by tapping the Ask a Questions tab in your webinar viewing panel. At the end of the presentation, the presenter and myself and the co-host will answer as many questions as we have time for. Also, you can get help at any time by accessing the attachment section of your webinar viewing panel and clicking on the help link. It'll give you some troubleshooting advice if you need that. Also, there's additional content in the attachments and links section provided by the organizer and the sponsor of today's show. So definitely check that out. You can usually get a copy of the slides and any handouts that are available from the presentation. At the end of the show, I'll ask you to interact with us one last time by giving us 1 through 5 star rating. 5 is a high rating. There's also a little field that allows you to provide indicator to the presenter of what you thought about their presentation and why you gave them the rating that you did. We appreciate that feedback, and I know that the presenter will as well, so I'll definitely encourage you at the end of the show to do that. One last thing, I need to welcome our co-host today, Megan Gahildi. Megan, how are you? And are you on the line?
I'm on the line. I'm here. Great. Thanks, Scott.
Excellent.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Megan Gahildi. I am Vice President of Customer Experience here at Zoomin, and we're very excited to be here today. I do want to tell you really quickly what Zoomin does. So Zoomin makes it easy for customers to find the answers they need, and we do this by ingesting technical product content from multiple sources and delivering it all with a unified experience across various places, including a doc portal, your community, your customer service site, or even in your product itself. So in this way, we really help customers self-serve, and we help your organization reduce support costs and improve product adoption. So with that, I want to introduce our wonderful guest today, and that is Jill Sheffield. Jill Sheffield is the VP of Content Strategy and Development at Mastercard. And so, Jill, I'm going to do my best at introducing you, and you can add in anything I miss, but I think I have quite a bit here. So you've been at Mastercard for almost 13 years, and I do know that you worked in network operations up until the time you jumped into content, so we'll talk a little bit about that. You worked in Warsaw, Poland for a while, which is super interesting. And I think some of the more personal interesting things from you are that you're a Floridian that's living in the Midwest, which, you know, must be tough on snow days. And also that you have something in common with my daughter, which is that you both go by the nickname of Sassy, which I think is super cool. How'd I do?
You did great, Megan. That's absolutely fabulous.
Did I miss anything?
No, not at all.
All right. Well, we'll get going then. Thanks so much for joining us. This is going to be fun.
Yeah,
I'm
excited.
In the past 18 months, I know you and Mastercard in general have been on a bit of a journey to transform this content team that you're leading. And so in this presentation, we're going to talk about how your team transformed its content strategy to deliver targeted content to a global audience, really to elevate the customer experience, but also to improve efficiency in content development and management. We'll also talk about the methods you use, the technologies, the processes that you use to boost your voice of customer score. And then lastly, we'll talk about how Mastercard envisions the future of personalized content delivery, how you'll be using AI and ML to support that, and how you plan to measure the impact on customer satisfaction, retention, productivity, things like that. Does that all sound right?
That sounds fabulous.
Good. All right, so let's jump in. I want to start by hearing about your personal journey. So you came into the content world fairly recently. So can you just tell us about that journey?
Sure. That journey started, when I was asked to lead this team. And as you said, I didn't come from a content background. My background was primarily in operations and technical and customer support, integrations. So I love when there's like chaos and I can organize it and build a better process. So I kind of liken my journey to doing jigsaw puzzles, because that's what you do with jigsaws. You got all of these pieces and you got to organize them. You need to put them in order to make a gorgeous picture that you can hang on your wall. So I came to the team at the time. It was called the Customer Technical Communications Team. And this team creates technical documentation for Mastercard's customers. They help them to understand Mastercard rules, how to configure their systems, and basically how to be a partner and to do business with Mastercard. So I come to the team and I'm thinking, okay, I'm leading a customer technical team, technical documentation team. How's this going to work? And so I start meeting with people, and I was one of those people who thought documentation, yeah, you create a Word document and you send it out. And as we all know, that was completely wrong, just wrong. I found out that it was quite a lot more complicated than that. People were talking to me in data and structured content and taxonomy and content strategy, and all of these words were completely unfamiliar with me. So it's like I had this puzzle, had all these pieces, and I needed to put it together, but I didn't know. I didn't have my little map or key on how this picture should look. I didn't know how I was going to build this puzzle, but I knew I had to perform some discovery, understand the team, the tools, and more importantly, the value that this organization brings to Mastercard. So I began to examine all the puzzle pieces. And the biggest asset I know people talk about are people, right? If you don't have people to do the work, you don't bring the value. So we have to protect our people. And I had to understand, what does this team look like? And I found out I had over 60 team members across 6 countries. And they encompass what we call our core Mastercard team, plus acquired entities and dedicated product teams. So they're creating content for specific products. And I found out in just the United States, there was over 200 years experience in creating content. So each of these teams I found out created content, but some were quite unique in their processes. They weren't all aligned. They weren't all similar. They each had different processes and procedures that they used. So now that I'm familiar with the team, I've started to look at our tools. And what I found out is, fortunately, we had some fantastic tools at our disposal. First, we were using Zoom In as our delivery channel, which provided our customer base a really great experience. It was a main delivery channel for Mastercard customers, and it was resided on our interface, our UI, called Mastercard Connect. The application that we use, we named the Technical Resource Center. So this is where all of our customers came to get their technical communications from Mastercard. What I found out is Zoom In provided the engine to power the TRC. And what I saw, what the value they brought, is that the content could be in HTML or it could be in PDFs. And PDFs that the customer could curate. They could group together documents that they wanted, download it, and create their own personal libraries, which was quite valuable to them. It was flexible because it was device agnostic. You could go online. You could also log in from your mobile device. And more importantly, I don't know if you ever have a group of papers and you need to do some research and you're looking for specific items, maybe like for Mastercard, it would be authorization. Can you imagine flipping through hundreds and hundreds of documents to find out where authorization lives and where all that content is? It would take forever, right? So this interface provides us a searchable way where they could look through all of the documentations that we have, thousands and thousands of documentation, and find the information that they need. And even better, it was personalized through entitlement. So when they logged on to the interface, they would get content that was of particular interest to them. And that's quite valuable. So they didn't have to look through everything. They could search through the things that was of most value and benefit to them. And with all of that, we also were provided the ability to retrieve analytics on the site. So we could further customize the experience, figure out any issues that we had with our searchable content. How many people were looking at our content? Was this content even valuable anymore? All of these things were very valuable as we're looking to evolve our content and evolve the customer experience.
Awesome. So we're very glad, of course, that you inherited Zoomin, but we're even more happy that you're really happy about the fact that you inherited Zoomin. So really interesting stuff there. But what other tools did you inherit?
Oh, that's a good question, and you're right. I was happy that we had Zoomin because I felt like we had a leg up, or at least I had a leg up. I had a little notch in my belt, so that was very important going into this experience, this journey. But another tool that we used was Ixiosoft. And Ixiosoft was our component content management system. What I found out with Ixiosoft is that they already had a tight integration with Zoomin, so that was quite valuable too. When I joined the team, our team was just getting the training on Ixiosoft and we were about to launch it. So it was a really key time for me to join and to really grow into this process with the team. What I found out, the benefits of Ixiosoft is that it allowed our team to publish their content themselves. That was a big win for us. It was device agnostic like Zoomin, but the biggest benefit is that it allowed our authors to reuse objects for consistency. And it's all about the experience. When people see our content, it should be like Mastercard, and I don't want to sound too corny, but it should be priceless, right? So when you come into the Technical Resource Center and you're downloading our content, it should be a priceless experience and it should be consistent across. You know that this is Mastercard. It has our look and our feel. So the reusability really was like those puzzle shapes. When you have your puzzle and you have this piece and you said, oh, this fits here. Because it has the same shape, it can be used throughout. So our authors could develop content once, deliver it, and it can be consumed in multiple locations. And it becomes virtually unlimited in our output formats.
That's awesome. It sounds like you had, first of all, amazing people and a very large team from what I'm used to. And you had some powerful tools that work together seamlessly. So that's all great. But I'm guessing that it wasn't all roses. So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have asked me to lead the team if there wasn't something to do there. So there's always challenges. They just don't tell you about them at the beginning. They let you figure it out. Right. So going back to my puzzle, I'm looking at the pieces and I'm seeing something's missing here. So if we have these great, people that are working with the team, talented people with all these years of experience, we have the best in class industry tools. What could go wrong, right? Well, I found out that we recently had given our customer satisfaction scores, and when they came back, the scores were at 50%, which was a really low score for Mastercard. Wasn't really happy about that, but as some people said, well, Jill, you can only go up from here. So that was a positive. But the other part of this is that our management team had a lot of newcomers like myself. Like I was new to content. A lot of our management team, my direct reports, my manager, we were all new to content. So we were coming in, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with all of these great ideas and trying to figure out how to implement them, right? And then we had, like I said, I have this wonderful team that had been with the company 15, 20, 25 years. And they were used to the way things were. And even though some of our tools weren't optimal, they were what they've used forever. So we're human, right? We get stuck to the things that are familiar to us, and we take on the mantra, if it ain't broke, why fix it? But we had to evolve. We had to evolve. We had to reimagine the customer experience. We had to utilize the tools that we had to make a better environment for our customers and a better environment for ourselves. And lastly, there's one that's, all of corporate America, right? Resources. So I come to this team, and a lot of my team members were telling me that they were overworked. They had too much work. They barely had time to do anything. Well, I found out that we didn't have a way to measure the capacity on our team. So that becomes a real problem in an operations environment to try to communicate to management and to finance that, hey, we're understaffed and underfunded. So I need to find a way. How do we measure the capacity and figure out a way to understand how our staff should be, right-sized?
Got it. Yeah, that's a lot of challenges. So I happen to know, because I know your predecessor there, that your Zoomin implementation was very, very new. And as you mentioned, you were just bringing on Ixiosoft at the time. So you had all of these changes that had just happened or were ongoing, plus you had this voice of customer score that had historically been very low that you had to raise. And to do all that with proper staffing and funding is just incredible. So how did you sort of unpack all of that? How did you think through it and line it all up so that you could start to make a difference?
Very carefully. There were a lot of conversations. I mean, it's a lot. So I'm learning what content development is, and I'm learning about these new tools, and I'm learning this new team. So I had to figure out the challenges and where the gaps were, Megan. First, I had to determine what our goals were. That's important, because you can't get where you want to go unless you know what that is. I needed to figure out how should our team look. Like I said, where is the request coming from? What's driving it? I had to figure out what our content strategy is. I had to figure out what content strategy was, quite frankly, because it's the first time I heard about it. I had to figure out how we could gain, or if we could gain, efficiencies through our tools and automation. But at the top of everything, I had to ensure that we honored our commitments to our customers to deliver that elevated customer experience. Our team resides under global customer care, so the customer experience is at the forefront of everything that we do, and that's where we start from, right? So I looked at all of this, and I'm figuring out all the pieces, and the starting point was to complete the implementation of Ixiosoft. Like I said, we were right at the beginning, and to gain some efficiencies with the integration with Zoomin, our content delivery platform. And we needed to retire the other legacy tools that we were using so we could gain the value that we had in Ixiosoft and Zoomin.
Nice. Before you go on, I have a quick question from the audience that I think is highly relevant here, so I just want to throw it in here. They're wondering if you can share a little more about what those legacy tools were that your team was using, and then how you transitioned from those tools to Zoomin and Ixiosoft. And some of that we may cover later, but can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we were using Oxygen, and we were using Basant, And these are fine tools, but we wanted to gain, like I said, an elevated experience. And the hard part is, like I said, we had a lot of our content with our legacy tools, and our teams were very used to working with them. And we were using some things through a Citrix environment, which wasn't as optimal as we wanted it to be. So we wanted to elevate it and really focus on the value that the IXISOM Zoom and integration would bring for us. And we'll talk about those values a little bit later. But we had to basically set deadlines. We trained our team on the new tools. We provided support. And we're still like at the end of that migrating off. It's not a, hey, on November 22nd, you're going to not use these tools anymore. We had to build the processes and training and ensure that our internal teams had all of the resources that they need to make this transition as smooth as possible and ensure that we were still meeting the demand for our business partners and our external customers and internal business partners.
Nice. Thanks for answering that. Feel free to carry on where I cut you off.
Okay. So as you see here, I had my puzzle pieces on the table, so now we have to build the puzzle, right? And the puzzle all starts with a foundation. Like a house starts with a foundation, the puzzle has a foundation. And I don't know how you guys do puzzles, but I always do the outside, and I know how big it is, and the outside's where I start. Once I have that together, I can build upon it. Well, I found that our foundation, that outside of the puzzle, was our content strategy. We had one content strategist who'd been with the team for less than a year, and the authoring team had not yet embraced the content strategy idea. They didn't quite understand it, and they weren't sure what the value that was going to bring them. And so I had to figure out, how do I get everyone on board with this content strategy? How do I ensure that our foundation that we were using for our tools was firm, and that we could build a sound platform on it? So what I determined is that we had a lot of part-time information architects on our team, and they were formed from the different various groups that we had, and they were supporting the teams that they worked on. But with the one content strategist and in needing all of these things that had to be done, I realized that we needed to create a core information architecture team. So we went to my managers and I said, hey, we're going to have to give up a couple of resources so that we could build this full-time information architecture team. And we strategized and we picked the two great people in our organization who were going to join this content strategist and build our team. Their primary responsibility was in content creation. And before, when they were part-time IAs, their focus was all on authoring. If there was content to author, they dropped their information architecture work and picked that up first. Now we had people who were devoted full-time to creating the content strategy that we had and to focus on that foundation, which we would build all of our future endeavors on. They would be the integration point between our authors and our technology team and other taxonomists in the organization. And really, like I said, help create that seamless Mastercard experience and ensure that our technology team understood all of the requirements that we needed to enhance the customer experience.
So just to add a little scope here, so you went from information architecture being a distributed function across maybe other technical writers who were primarily a technical writer and just had a little IA experience to having two full-time IAs to cover. Is that right?
Yes, two full-time IAs and a content strategist as well. So
Awesome.
our content strategist was very versed in this field and served as a mentor, for our full-time IAs that were coming on board. And so it's a great story to tell that we not only had a basis to build our content strategy on, but we used our internal resources who were excited about learning more about content strategy to help build this and define a new career path for them as well.
Cool.
So as we see on the screen here, now that I have my foundation, I had to get all the puzzle pieces together and group them. You get your puzzles and you look at the colors and you say, you know what, this looks like it belongs over here. Well, I had to do that too, and I had to group all of our light colors, and one of the biggest groups is our customers. So I had to listen to our customers. I heard that they didn't like us, but I needed to know more about that in order to know what direction did I need to go into. So our global customer care had a customer experience team, and they performed outreach to our customers. It was better that we stayed kind of separate from that, Megan, because sometimes when you're really close to your baby, you can't see where your baby may have problems.
Yes.
Where somebody's coming from the outside could really have that very open, frank discussion with the customers.
Yes, very true.
Yeah. So they started a co-creation workshop, we called it, and they just started imagining what would that enhanced customer experience look like to them. What we found out is that our customer wanted content that was easily digestible, that was actionable, and that was relevant. Sounds like an easy thing to do to me, but what we determined is that the content needed to be an asset, to their daily operations. What they told us, which, just broke my heart, they hired teams of people to consume our content, where some of our competitors didn't require so much care and feeding. And I may need, a lot of care and feeding in my personal life, but it shouldn't be that way in my work life. So we had to make some changes.
So you're saying your customers hired teams to consume the content you were developing?
Yes, yeah. As much as it pains me to say that, yeah.
That's just making sure I understood. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hired teams of people to consume our content. No, never a good story. But what you see here is actual feedback from those the workshop. Our customer experience team went on the road and they went to our customers and they said, "Here's our content. Tell me what you like about this content. What works for you? What doesn't?" So if you look at that, they took the content. Let's go back again, Megan, to the previous slide. They took the content and they had red dots, yellow dots, and green dots. And they put red dots on the stuff that didn't work for them. They didn't like it, get rid of it. Yellow meant we were going in the right direction, but, needed some more work. And then we had green, like, keep this, we like this. And as you can see, there's a lot of red dots on that screen. So we had to figure out how to fix that. And how we started that, how we started to build on our promises, as we're putting all these pieces together, we knew that we had to build on the experience, delivering a scalable, personalized product, and we had to deliver on our commitment to our customer, which was working with you to proactively deliver technical documentation that's timely, it's accessible, and it's relevant, like I said. So figuring out where the gaps were, enabling reuse, automation of content, utilizing effective dates so they knew when the content became actionable for them, that they could know that right away and we would be able to update our documentation accordingly. Translation automation was important because localization is quite important in a global or economy with our customers being everywhere. We needed business analytics which would drive intelligent choices for us. We, of course, wanted to keep that self-created content, that personal experience. We wanted to introduce a SME review process where we could collaborate with our internal business partners so that we could reduce the number of inaccuracies in our content. There's nothing more frustrating than when we have to republish content because we made a mistake and the customer has to redo work on their side because we made some mistakes. More importantly, we had to ensure that this was personalized, that customers could get the information when they needed it, how they needed it, and as much or as frequently as they wanted. And it has to be scalable. So the goal became in reach when we did the integration with ZoomIn and IxiaSoft. So with the ZoomIn and IxiaSoft integration, we updated our content template, which was a big win for our customer. We had a format that they could use and really get to the meat of the information they needed very quickly. In addition, it allowed our authors to self-publish. We were able to build a synonym and acronym depository, and all along while we're improving the search experience, which is a constant improvement cycle. And it provided data specialization, which was part of our content strategy framework.
That's really cool to hear how you lined all that stuff up. Now, we had talked previously, and you had mentioned that your sort of North Star was improving CSAT scores. That was your voice of the customer initiative that you wanted. So can you tell us about some of the very specific initiatives or goals you took on specifically to drive that?
Yes, of course. The very specific, like I said, was changing the layout of our content. So to get to that 5 seconds or less, the customer said, when I get a piece of documentation, I need to know within 5 seconds or less, do I need to even go any further? So if you look at what you have on the screen here, this is our before. Our before, we had the information scattered very vertically in the document. And if you have a 50-page document, you're scrolling forever to figure out, okay, what is this document trying to tell me? We knew we had to change that because that's not an optimal customer experience. So next, we'll look at the after. We updated the content and we utilized very good format that put on the left rail of the content information that told us what was the audience, what's the effective date, what are the products that we're speaking about. So me as a customer, I could look at that left rail and determine very quickly if I'm an issuer and this documentation is about an acquirer, I know I don't have to be, I don't have to go any further. I can move on to the next document. We really focused on that above the fold experience for them so that the information that they needed to know was right in front of them. We created an executive overview so they could see what the context of the document was right away and help them to understand what actions that they needed to take, getting them closer to that 5 seconds or less.
That's awesome. Can you just give us an idea of how difficult or easy that was to change the look and feel of it in your ZoomIn implementation?
Oh boy, so it was, I'm not going to say it was easy because we had to imagine the format. We had to gather feedback from our customers. We had to talk with our tech team who had to talk with ZoomIn and IxiaSoft, and there was a lot of collaboration involved and a lot of technology that went into creating this format. But once we had it and once it was implemented, we got a big win from our customers. They were very happy with this format. It did give them the information they needed. And it was easy for our authors too, because they knew once they filled in this information on their templates, they had all the information they needed to satisfy their customers. So as you look on the screen here, you can see the before and after. Before the integration that allowed this format, we had several steps that we had to do to publish documents, and it was quite time consuming. After the integration, as I stated before, the authors were able to create the documentation in Ixiasoft, and they could publish directly to our ZoomIn platform. This saved a lot of production time and allowed the technology team who had been published our content before, they were able to save time and really focus on the things that would drive value from a technical aspect. So our picture's coming together, right? We've figured out all of the tools and all of the pieces, and we're putting them in the right places. We've enabled productivity. We've increased and enhanced customer experience. Authors are using consistent, reusable objects. We could develop once and deliver a lot of different places. We had topic architecture, which included business data that we use for search facets to track our jobs and, like I said, to continue with that personalization objective. So we're looking at things that made our internal teams happy and things that made our customers happy. So it was a win-win all the way around. So now we're on a great path. Our puzzle is all assembled, and we have to now frame it. And looking at how do we want to frame it, how should it look in our space, what are some of the goals that we've set forth, and what the future looks like. So what success looks like to us is that our customers are happy, increasing that customer satisfaction score. We become a place where content people want to work for us. We retain our employees. It's an exciting place to work because we do things the right way and we're focused on the customer. And we have these exciting, great tools to use. And people want to know about that. They want to say, hey, I want to come work for Mastercard because they have all of these best-in-class industry tools and experiences. We have ways to measure the efficiencies that we've gained, and we're building, more importantly, what all businesses want. They want a return on investments, right? If it isn't providing value to them, then why do we have it? So we want to make sure that we continue to provide that enhanced experience for our customers and bringing that value in for Mastercard as well.
Very nice. So those are all really good things to shoot for. Do you have some specific examples of outcomes that you achieved?
Sure. So we've been talking about all of this time about customer satisfaction. I'm happy to report that this past year we increased customer satisfaction by 2%. Overall, since I started in this role, it's been 6%. So we're on a very fast track of bringing value to our customer. But more interesting the past year, remember how I said that our customers had to hire a team of people to digest our content?
Right.
Well, the ease of doing business, we also measure that, and that increased by 6%. So customer satisfaction 2%, but it became a lot easier for our customers to do business with us, which is very important. And I'm sure that customer satisfaction will continue to go up as well.
That's awesome. Very, very nice. So we're getting some questions from the audience. Thank you so much, Jill, for all of that great detail. I can go ahead and read some of these questions, and I think Scott may jump on and read some as well if he wants.
Yeah. While you're looking,
do you want to go for it?
At them, yeah, I wanted to ask Jill a question first while you look at the questions from the chat room. So, Jill, you mentioned that you had to learn about content strategy, and as the co-editor of a book called The Language of Content Strategy, we brought 52 experts together and asked them each to define one vocabulary word. and explain why somebody who wanted to be a content strategist would need to understand that word. It was a very challenging project in itself just to get everybody to agree and to kind of talk about it in a single voice. Did you find any resources that were useful to you on your exploration to understand what content strategy was that you could recommend for others?
I found, and I'll tell anyone this, that when you don't know something very well, you find people who do. So what I had at my disposal is a very good content strategist and very patient and took time to explain to me what needed to be done. Sometimes I had to really, help them tell me in very clear, simple language. And one of the people actually gave me a book called Information Development by Wiley. And it had a lot of content in there that kind of helped me to understand why it was important and what we needed to do as well. But I, by no means, am an expert. I really rely on smart people that know content strategy and know what to do, and you trust your instincts and trust their judgment to move forward. And it's working because our customers are telling us that this is the right way to go, and our internal business partners are happy with the direction that we're going as well.
Excellent. For the viewers that are show today, I think the book you're referring to is Information Development, Managing Your Documentation Projects, Portfolio, and People, written by Joanne Hackos, formerly of the CIDM. So for those of you looking for that, you can Google that. Also, if you're looking for the language of content strategy, you can go to thelanguageofcontentstrategy.com, where there is a free version of the book available online in a browser that will also help you with some of those terms. I have another question, which is, you had the great opportunity to reshape how your company has been able to interact with customers. How has that impacted the morale of your team? Do you feel like they feel like there's a reward in making this effort and that it's worth it?
Absolutely. So when I started, it was a shock to everyone that the customers weren't happy with our content. And this wasn't a failure of our team. And I had to let them know that, because they're like, what do you mean? You come aboard and all of a sudden our customers are unhappy. But really, it wasn't anything that they were doing. It was how we were doing it. So one thing that I encouraged our team members at every single team meeting was to talk about empowerment. If they felt like we were going down a path that wasn't in the best interest of their customers, they were empowered to speak up. They were empowered to push back to our internal business partners and say, this isn't in the best interest of our customers, and this is what we should do. For example, if we were going to communicate something that wasn't clear, that they could ask the questions, they could make it better, or if we weren't giving our customers enough time to digest the content, that we would push back on publishing, so we weren't in a rush to publish, and we could get all of the information that they needed so that they would know how to react. And I just preach this all the time: empowerment, empowerment, empowerment. And through this process, and by backing them up when escalations occurred, they really started to feel empowered. And I've seen a big change in our team, where they're coming up with more suggestions and ways to make things easier, because they see that the management team is receptive to those ideas. We love those ideas. And again, I want to make Mastercard a place where people want to come and they want to work here. So I think we've seen an increase in morale with our teams, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, that's
I love that
really
you
nice
brought
to hear.
up. Sorry, go ahead.
Just saying, that's really nice to hear, and I'm glad that you shared that, because I think sometimes technical documentation people feel the last of the food chain, if you will. You know, they're now explain away our bad design is sometimes our job.
Right.
And it's not always viewed as rewarding, especially if the writers know there are better ways to do things. But oftentimes they don't know, like you suggested. Your team didn't really know, and were kind of surprised that the customers were unhappy. We did a show, Megan and I, recently, with somebody who was talking about information science, and sometimes people are surprised when scientists monitor consumers to see what they view and how they read. And as it turns out, they don't actually read all the writing that we write, and they don't read it word for word in the linear way that we write it. And so that's often shocking, too, to writers. And so I'm glad that you were able to encourage them to see the value, because I think making changes is complicated for humans, and having a good feeling about it and also a business value, I think, makes it easier for people to want to explore and to do better work.
Absolutely. And as they see that customer satisfaction score rise, it's a feeling of accomplishment, right? And you feel like I have contributed to the bottom line of my company, and what I do is important, and here's why it's important. One of the things that we did during the co-creation workshop and some of our conferences is we're bringing our writing team in on this conversation so they can hear from the customers themselves. And that validates the feelings that they have. Again, it adds to that empowerment. And when you feel good about what you do, you want to continue doing it and you want to do better.
I'm going to bounce off of that idea of empowerment and sort of paraphrase a question that came in from the audience. When managing a team, I know very, very well that you kind of have to find this balance between empowering the team to make their own decisions with the idea of governing the standards across your content set. And so somebody's actually asking about that balance and how do you collaborate with your global content writers, and more importantly, how do you find that balance between allowing them to do what they do best without allowing them to go rogue and make unilateral decisions that might not fit with the standards that you're creating?
Well, it's all about guardrails, right? So these are our guardrails, and you establish those. We have our standards, we have our style guides, we have our tone, etc. Within these guardrails, this is how we're creating our content. And then we start to look at ways to improve what we do. We look at, are we publishing the right content at the right time? And we give them, with that empowerment, to come to us with ideas on how to change it. So you have that freedom, but then you also have guardrails that they follow as well.
Nice. Yes, those guardrails are so important. Beautiful. Somebody asked what the time frame was from beginning the analysis to the end to the completion, and I don't think they meant this entire 18-month period, because we kind of did that up front. I'm guessing that this came in about the time where we were talking about the analysis of the legacy tools and then making the shift over to Zoomin and Ixiasoft and creating that integration.
So that's an interesting question, but I inherited this. So I came in after they'd already made those decisions and made that shift. But I've been with the team for, like I said, almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years at the end of this year. And so it's a continuous process. And right now we've made some major wins this year with the integrations. It took several months to work through our goals and to get them implemented. But I want to be careful and say we're never going to have an end goal, because we're always looking for ways to optimize the experience, looking for ways to improve, looking at adding additional value. So I don't see this as, an end point. It's just we're moving the goal along further down the road. I hope that answers the question.
It does. I think that's
so. Again, I don't.
Plan.
Yeah. So a couple sort of related questions. One person wants to know how you made reuse easier for your writers, and then somebody else actually is asking about this idea of content strategy and reuse across various departments, and whether that sharing of content was just for your tech writers, or, for example, did someone in marketing, did marketing start thinking about content reuse in the same way that your tech writer might, or some other department?
Well, Mastercard is actually really focused on delivering an enhanced customer experience. So we're putting that at a corporate level a goal. So we did recently what we call Customer Experience Week, and I create technical documentation, but to your point, Megan, we have marketing people that create documentation, people who create our website, et cetera. There's all these different places where we can communicate to our customer, and we've made it intentional to collaborate together to build ways to create the seamless experience for our customers. We're collaborating with teams that we never did before to find out what are the things that we have in common and what are the ways that we can drive value together, and going after these wins in a more collaborative format. But I really loved how they've embraced it, and we've had, instead of having what we call Customer Support Week, it's been Customer Experience Week, and we had all kinds of conversations around the customer experience, and we're tracking initiatives on a company-wide format on how we're really driving value and ensuring that we're moving closer to that enhanced experience.
That's awesome. I think there's a future show on how you do a Customer Experience Week. Sounds like something fun, Scott. We got to do that.
I think can we do that virtually? I think that we can pull that off.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Very good.
What do you think about your next
Jill,
steps is what I'm thinking about, Jill. Like,
go ahead.
You've got this under wraps now. You're learning lessons. Your team is starting to think in creative ways about how they can use your new tools and systems to do better work. What do you think comes next? Are there aspirational things you have that you want to do with your content in the future that you might be able to share?
Sure. So we're continuing on with our content strategy. One of the things that's been very exciting for us this year is we're migrating content from legacy applications onto the TRC. So our customers are even asking even now, when's that going to be complete? Because they know when we get this content on our Zoom-powered Technical Resource Center, it becomes searchable, and they get all of those values of self-creating content, et cetera. So we're really looking forward to that in the short term. In the long term, I'm looking forward to having more artificial intelligence built in, machine learning, creating more concise executive summaries, enabling chat bots. I'm hoping next year that we start looking at building a great ontology model for our content as well that will link content together. I'm looking forward to really thinking about how we use infographics. It's a big thing for me because whenever you open up this new technology now, they don't have step-by-step instructions. They have pictures. So I want to figure out how do we translate our content into something similar where we're using more infographics to power it. It's a universal language, doesn't require a lot of localization, but how do we incorporate that strategy into what we do?
I've got a question from somebody on Twitter who wanted to know. Sorry, I have a question for somebody on Twitter that I think it's easy to answer, which are you incorporating video documentation into your strategy?
Absolutely. That's part of that infographics videos. People are all about that. I've realized a shift in, like normal news. You went from newspaper to now a lot of articles are videos, right? So,
yeah.
Excuse me, we want to do that as well.
That makes perfect sense. Megan, do you have a final question for Jill?
No, I just wanted to thank Jill. Thank you so much for your time. This was really, really interesting. Loved hearing about it. And, I've just always been very impressed by how you run your team. And so very good job and keep it up.
Thank you very much. I really loved it. And you can find me on LinkedIn if you have any other questions.
Excellent. I'm sure you might get a follow-up. There are definitely people who have questions, and we can have you back at another time to talk about the future and some of the other topics that I know you only got to brush on just briefly. So thank you for joining us today, Jill. I really appreciate it. All right, so Jill is at Mastercard, and you can reach her on her LinkedIn profile. Check in the attachments and links section for some content there and how you can reach both Jill and Megan and Zoom In Software. So thank you, Mastercard, for sharing your story today with us. We really appreciate it. Today's show has been brought to you by Zoom In Software. Zoom In is a company that transforms technical product content into a dynamic and intuitive customer experience so people can find the answers they need to use your product or service to the fullest. Zoom In has a cloud-based solution that allows you to streamline content operations and gain powerful analytics so you can refine your content strategy and improve customer experience. If you want to do that, I'm sure you do, check out the Zoom In website, zoominsoftware.com, and also look in the attachment section for some content provided by Zoom In that you can download or click on a link and view right now today. And I want to tell you about some upcoming shows. First of all, tomorrow we'll be joined by Forrester Serious Decisions analyst Kathleen Pierce on our biweekly coffee and content show to talk about the rise of content atomization to support artificial intelligence and advanced personalization of content. Be sure to join me and Patrick Bozek tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific time for that show. It'll also be recorded. And speaking of recordings, Tuesday, November the 10th, Megan and I will once again join you, and this time we'll have our guest Paul Parada, the Technical Communication Wrangler, who's going to discuss the Content Wranglers Annual Survey Technical Documentation Industry Survey results, and we'll talk a little bit about them and take questions from the audience. So we hope you'll join us for that show as well. And the following week, we're going to have a rescheduled show that had been scheduled earlier, but due to technical difficulties, we were unable to show you at the time. And this show is about content strategy. It's going to be a little bit about the history, what's going on today, and a look at the future from our content strategy evangelist, Rahel Ann Bailey. That's Tuesday, November the 17th on the Content Wrangler channel. And you've been watching the Content Wrangler webinar series with Scott Abel and Megan Gilhooly as your co-hosts today. Thank you to Jill Sheffield from Mastercard for joining us. I'm Scott Abel, the Content Wrangler. Don't forget to give Jill a rating on the way out the door using the Rate This tab, 1 through 5 stars. 5 is a great rating, 1 is low. And there's a little field to share some feedback with Jill if you'd like, and we'd appreciate it if you did that. Today's show has been recorded. You've been watching how Mastercard turned its documentation into a superior customer experience. You can rewatch this program at any time. Just wait about a half an hour and return to the same URL you're using to watch the live show, and you'll be able to access a recording of the show that you can share with others, and we hope that you do. Until next time, be safe, be well, keep doing good work. We'll see you on another episode of the Content Wrangler webinar series. Thanks for joining us today. Goodbye.